Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Walk On Podcast. I am your host, John Fairbanks. We're going over episode 2 of the Untold Swamp Kings companion episodes. So this is a companion episode that goes along with episode 4 of the Swamp Kings docuseries on Netflix. I have a guest with me today. His name is Chris Pintado. He and I played together on Florida's team. So we both were playing at the time of episode 4 that spans kind of essentially from the Georgia game from 2008 all the way through the 2009 season. We don't even get to the Sugar Bowl, but we're going to talk about the Sugar Bowl. Damn it to hell, because there's things to talk about there, and we'll get there. But we're going to talk. So if you haven't watched the Untold series, right, Swamp Kings, if you haven't watched it on Netflix yet, this is going to go along with that final episode, episode 4, and it's going to be companion episodes. So go watch that, come back, and then listen to this. And Chris, it's really great to have you.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate you having me on. My name is Chris Pintado, for everybody that doesn't know me. I played linebacker at the University of Florida for the 06 through the 09 years. I primarily played on special teams, so I lettered my last 2 years playing on kickoff return, punt return, a little bit of kickoff here or there, field goal. So I was mainly just kind of a specialist. I played sparingly on linebacker when we kind of blew some teams out.
Which is awesome. And in true walk-on fashion, right, Chris and I were both walk-ons for the University of Florida. And because of Chris's smattering of special teams play, he's near and dear to my heart, because that's exactly what I did. I was on special teams stuff as well. Chris and I both were on kickoff return in 2008, right? So 2008, 2009. So can be able to play that same position for kickoff return. And so I'm guaranteed that we'll have stories that we're going to jump into. And so let's jump right into it. So in the start of episode 4, we finally address the Georgia game. So Georgia game 2008. And I was super confused when we went through episode 3, which is you're chronicling all of 07. And we don't talk about the fact that those motherfuckers at Georgia come out and dance in the goddamn end zone after they score the very first touchdown in 07.
Yeah, that's kind of nuts. Like, I remember, I have a weird take on this. So I remember watching everybody come out, and I didn't really process it at all. I honestly immediately thought that they were in crazy favorable. I don't think that like the entire team is gonna run onto the field and start celebrating. So like, I just start seeing some like big guys out there. If I'm thinking like they're running some weird like formation or something like that, and it doesn't really like dawn on you that everybody's celebrating until like you see it like on the jumbotron essentially. I'm kind of surprised we didn't start a fight, to be honest with you. Like, I think a lot of people were just in shock as to like what happened. Like, I look at that every single time I look at that replay, I think, how did that not end up with a giant brawl? Because it's super, like you don't do that to somebody. Like, it's super disrespectful. Like, in hindsight, I'm glad that didn't happen, but I'm honestly surprised with some of the guys that were on the team there.
For sure.
Yeah. like, I think like one of the main characters, or not main individuals that's like usually in like the screenshots is like Derek Harvey.
Derek Harvey.
Yeah. So like I was thinking like, how did that happen? And I think it's just we got totally shocked. Like, nobody thinks that entire team will celebrate at one point in time. But
yeah. So I have told a story about Derek Harvey in the 2007 episode. So that is going to be the episode 3 companion episode that I did with Blackett. So with Roderick Blackett, he and I go over episode 3 together.
Okay,
and I tell a story about Ian McQuay was a walk-on. And he was like a walk-on that was 18, but he looked 45. Because he kind of already was like, had like, you know what I mean? Like the Catholic priest balding situation going on.
Yeah.
And whatever he did. So we're at the hotel, and I'll tell it again because it's too good. Because I haven't told it to you. Because I don't know how many people were there. So I'm just at the hotel for that Capital One Bowl. And we're at that like hotel. It's like by SeaWorld. in Orlando. And we're in the hotel, and I'm just down in the lobby, and they have the elevators that are see-through. And all I see is Ian is in the elevator. I see Harvey come into the elevator, and I don't know what gets said, but all I see is Harvey grab Ian by the neck and pick him up and pin him to the wall of the glass elevator and just holds him there until the elevator gets to the lobby, and then he sets him down and gets out. And McQuay comes out, and I'm like, what the fuck happened? He's like, I have no idea. I have no clue. And that's like I have one of a couple other Derek Harvey stories that are just like mass violence, like significant amounts of personal violence towards others. So for sure, it's surprising that we don't get into a brawl and when we see the Georgia game go through. All right, so I have to stop for a second because so Chris, you've been nice enough to be able to record with us right now, but like you actively have a hurricane like over your house.
Yeah, right now we're dealing with the storm. It's actually trending, or at least kind of veering a little northwest, but still some of like the beginning of it is kind of coming through Gainesville right now. We should then have a little bit of a break for a couple hours, and then basically starting at 2 a.m. we'll be dealing with the storm for a while.
It's really inconsiderate because we're trying to record and it's causing it to be jarbled. So we'll try and be quick. Hopefully we can get through it tonight. But so ultimately, yes, it was surprising there isn't a fight because of Derek Harvey, a couple of the guys we have that just have hairpin triggers and historically have had hairpin triggers. And like you said, it was such a surprise that 07, they stormed the field. No fights happen. We lose. 07 continues to totally blow for multiple reasons. And but getting to the UGA game, so getting to the Georgia game in 08, there's like a whole bunch of shit that happens in the offseason to cause still for me a visceral hate for Georgia.
Yeah.
And it starts go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm actually surprised Spikes didn't bring it up because like it still rings a bell in like my head. So like all off season on the defensive side, like we were constantly reminded on like how many yards Sean Moreno ran on that. So like 188 yards. And like I remember like one of our midnight lifts, like we had to do 188 of everything. And like it was just 188 push-ups, 188 like, and it wasn't that the task at hand was hard, but it was just like the constant reminder of how many yards he ran on us. And it's just, I think when they mentioned in the episode, I think it was maybe Coach said like that was like no team has been more like ready to go than any other like game specifically. Like I agree with that. Like in any of the games, championship games or whatnot, like that was the one game that I think every single person just poured every single thing that they had out on them.
Oh, absolutely. Because also, whenever we had to run stadiums, so for every game you lost, you had to run one stadium in the winter and the spring. You had to run a stadium for every loss. And again, I've touched on it before in previous episodes, but if you're coming into this one right now because you love Chris and you're listening to this one for the first one of the Walk On podcast, it's a stadium is running every single step in our 90,000 plus person stadium. And we already had to do it years before, right? Stadiums were already a thing. We've done them before. But the stadiums we had to run in the offseason between 07 and 08, there was a whole nother fucking level because like they would bring us in and then make us watch the highlight tape of the Georgia game.
I forgot about that. Yeah. That's nuts.
And that was like, it was so seeded for me. Again, I'm not from Florida. So like I grew up in Southern California where I hated USC. Like the Trojans was who I hated because I grew up in a UCLA family. But the hate that I have for Georgia that was manufactured by the team in just that 07 offseason is enough to where it's just like, Georgia fucking sucks. I hate, that's why I'm Bob Black's like, can I say bad word? Like, can I say bad words? And it's like, yeah, you can say, it's like, I fucking hate Georgia. And it's like, we fucking hate Georgia. Like, I hate the state. I hate driving through it. I hate people that live there. Like, it just is like, it just is, I hate everything that is Georgia. And it comes from just absolute legitimate brainwashing that Meyer and the strength staff did to us in that offseason.
Yeah, they did a good job. They got us ready. Like,
they got us ready
for the task at hand to be ready for that game. Like, they did their job. Yeah, I forgot about the whole like watching like the highlight tapes and everything like that. Like, I just remember having to run stadiums in like you're running like at 6 a.m. or whatnot. It's like almost still pitch black, and like you're in like the northernmost upper deck of the swamp, and just like, man, it is pitch black. You barely see. I'm gonna fall off. But
oh yeah, when you get up to some of like the
very,
high up
very north
spots.
end zone, yeah,
absolutely,
nuts.
Yeah,
crazy.
And
but,
so, and Spikes isn't kidding. Like, we pissed on team logos in the urinals
all year,
all the time. Like, that was a normal thing for sure.
Yeah, no, that was great. I don't know who was responsible for that, but it was brilliant because I remember just constantly having to like pee on like your opposing team's like logo. It was great.
Yeah,
it
was super awesome.
Yeah, like obviously like the game itself, like most people kind of know. I think like one thing I wish they touched on more was like the timeout part of the game. Or at least got Coach Meyer. Yeah, I wish they got Coach Meyer's input on that, or at least like asked him like anything on that, because that was great. Like, that was just like the icing on the cake. And
so, if in case, right, you don't know what this story is, because this is deep inside baseball. I have to have watched that game. So we are beating the ever living shit out of Georgia, and the game is just so far gone. And at the end, Meyer uses all of his timeouts to just like relish in the moment.
Yeah, I think
relish in the moment.
Yeah, I think like he was calling timeouts and just like pumping up the crowd. Like, that was great to me. And then like I remember, because I played on like kickoff return that game, and like the game was way out of hand already. And they scored towards the end of the game, and like whoever it was at the time like told Rainey, like, just fair catch it, take a knee, like just let the offense have the ball.
Yeah.
And Rainey, he's not going to do that.
No.
So like we're running out, he's like, I'm taking this. So I remember that, because he like kind of toyed around, kind of sat there for a little bit, like he was gonna fake a knee, and just like took off running.
Yeah.
I like those are kind of just like weird little plays that happened throughout the game that I remember that were. I just like sticks with me about how Rain was like, screw it, I'm gonna score. Like, I'm not gonna take a knee. Forget that. Yeah.
I love it. And once we get done, so then the series continues into Kentucky. And I actually, I don't know if it goes into Kentucky, but I made a note because Kentucky doesn't show up. But I had to make a note where it's like, Kentucky's the fucking worst. Did you ever go to play in Kentucky?
I did. I think I played there. Did we travel there in 08 or 09? I can't remember what year we traveled.
We traveled to Kentucky in 08. This is the reason why I made a note.
In 08? Okay. Is that the year that Tebow got?
No, I'm sorry. We had him at, no, we had, so this is important. So Chris and I talked about this off air, and we're going to bring it up right now. It's one of the positives that Swamp Kings has had is that it helps us remember things that we've done in our lives. And it's funny because I said this to Chris, like totally unprompted by him at all. And it's the fact that other conversations that I've had with other guys, especially walk-ons, where it's like, I don't remember any. I barely remember. Yeah. Like, there's so many instances that I barely remember. And the one thing that's been cool about Swamp Kings coming out is like, oh yeah, we did that. And look, there I am. I forgot I was there. I forgot I was at that game. Like, it just is like, because like brain trauma is real. Yeah. And as a walk-on, you're used as like human ground meat a lot of the time. So you're just getting fucking destroyed on a regular basis. And so it seems to be pretty consistent with a lot of us where it's just like, I don't got it. So no, Kentucky,
Mm-hmm.
2008 was at home.
Yeah.
2009 was away, and that's when Tebow gets knocked out.
Yeah, that's when Tebow got hurt. Yeah, because I think '08, I actually got to play a little bit of like linebacker. We like destroyed them.
Dude, so we
Yeah,
destroy them in 08, right?
yeah.
So I'm the rocker position on
Oh
field
yeah,
goal.
yeah. That's
And
terrible.
so I was so pumped. I was so pumped to have gotten this position, right? And again, I explained it in the last episode, but it's the point of this position was you're the edge of the field goal unit. And your entire job as a lineman is you take a hard inside step to cut off the inside gap,
Mm-hmm.
and then you kick your leg back. And I think, were you a wing? Were you
I was
like,
a wing. Yeah, I was the
so,
right wing.
I've got Pintado, and he wasn't my wing. I think I was on
Uh-huh.
the left-hand side.
Yeah.
But it's like I got a guy that's behind me, and I kick my leg back, so I touch his leg. So I'm in like a full, like,
Split.
exposed penthouse, like Playboy position, and I have my arm back, and you're just on a cross. You're just in this crucifix position, and the whole goal is to get run over. So and not let somebody come off the edge. And in this position, because you're going to get run over, you'll take like 2 or 3 guys with you.
Yeah.
Kentucky, we scored, I don't know what it fucking was. It was like 70 points in that game. And they only rushed my side on the field goal unit. So I got so fucked up that game. Like I got like terrible concussion. Like my wife was having to watch me like overnight and like not let me sleep. Like I got fucked in that Kentucky game.
That's funny.
But at Kentucky, right? Tebow gets knocked out the next year.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason I made the note of it was like Kentucky was by far the worst fucking stadium that we ever played at. Like their fans were so goddamn brutal, and the way the stadium was set up was that they still was so small, a little bit like Vandy, where they're just on you.
Yeah.
So they're on top of you on the sidelines, just talking just mad amounts of shit. And it's like, dude, you guys are this isn't Kentucky of like the 20 teams that like kind of got their shit together. Like this is Kentucky, like the doormat of the fucking SEC at this time.
Yeah, they were terrible then.
Their fans were brutal.
I just remember, and it's funny because like my brother-in-law went to Kentucky,
That's awesome.
and we go up there a fair amount. But yeah, I just remember them like booing and cheering whenever Tebow got hurt. I remember the stadium was a little weird. I don't remember the locker room. I remember Vandy's locker room. That was a sardine can basically.
Yeah. My favorite story of the Kentucky game was my parents told me they were going, and Jim Tartt's dad was like walking with them. And Jim Tartt played offensive line and was from the panhandle of Florida, like a 1 or 2 stoplight town kind of a spot. And Jimbo's dad, is walking or whatever, and some folks like come up to the parents and are like running their mouths or whatever. And he like pulls out a fucking Bowie knife, like out of his boot. And it's just like telling like just like to fuck off. And I'm just like it's just like, yes, that is Florida versus Kentucky. That is Florida versus Kentucky for sure. But no, we eventually get, so we zoom in the episode for Swamp Kings. We zoom kind of just right into Oklahoma.
Like they touched on at the SEC championship game a little bit.
That's right. We do talk about it briefly.
Yeah.
And so 2008, we're for that championship game. Where are we at? What is your remembrance of working in there?
I remember, so like I was always one of, like, obviously I didn't play like a humongous role, but I was always one of those guys that like, it was weird. Like you just assumed Tebow and like Spikes were going to carry the team to a victory somehow.
Yeah.
And I remember that was the first game I was like legitimately concerned because like obviously Percy was hurt. Percy, like if you ask me, my personal opinion is he was our best player, like best athlete I've ever seen in my life. Like, and then
I would agree with that.
Yeah, and it actually reminded me, like I forgot CI was on that team and was hurt.
I saw him hurt on the sideline too.
Yeah.
I'm like, no one said this dude's name. Talk about like a goddamn specimen.
Yeah, so like going into the year, that's probably 2 of our like top 3 playmakers right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't remember too much of like the actual like game itself, except like I remember more in '09. But I just remember like having legitimate concerns of like from an offensive standpoint, like were we going to be able to like score enough? Because first he was a huge, like obviously we had a lot of weapons, we had a lot of speed and whatnot, but like he was our best offensive playmaker.
Yeah.
Like defenses have to scheme for somebody like that, and we hadn't really had to deal with that majority of the year. Like you can kind of rely on Percy to make a big play and whatnot. So you kind of had to use a lot more of Rainey and Demps, and then you see some plays being made by like Lewis Murphy and Coop and whatnot, and David Nelson. So and Hernandez obviously kind of made some big plays I think in that
For
year, but
sure. For sure.
we had to kind of have some more people in like supporting roles that given year step up with those guys out.
Yeah, because it would have been kind of the first chance for a lot of those dudes to
Yeah.
really be able to step into that role.
Correct. Yeah.
Because when
Yeah.
Percy's healthy, that's
Yeah. It's
we just go to
just
Percy.
give them a speed sweep and then just go
Right.
ahead and run out the field goal unit. Yeah.
I remember so many times being like on the other end of the field and
hmm
like they just off he goes, like the breaks like an
Yeah.
80-yard be just like having to like full ass dead sprint to the opposite end of the
Yeah.
field to get there and just be like, oh my
Yeah.
god, I'm gonna die, like I gotta get
Yeah.
there. Oh yeah.
Yeah. He was not like he was. I've never seen somebody like that fast in pads. So like is a little bit outside of it, but like obviously like me playing on scout team defense, like I played kind of outside linebacker. So like when you're playing scout team, you kind of flex into being like a nickel essentially. So like I had to quote unquote cover him.
That's awesome.
um but like what surprised me, and like obviously he had like some injuries and nicks and stuff like that, but like when he practiced hard.
Yeah.
And he was a guy that was going to block the crap out of you in a scout team drill. So like that really like surprised me. Like somebody like him that is like basically has the skill sets that he had. Like I remember him as somebody like something that I think is like not really talked about. Like he practiced hard when he practiced. And that's
Yeah.
kind of not the case for every single superstar that you kind of remember. At least like that's what I remember him, because he used to block the crap out of me.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
scout team I think is valid to be able to bring it up because, right, even
hmm
though we were playing, especially for me in '08,
Yeah.
it's I'm just a rocker, right? I have that
hmm
side of for the field goal unit, but other than that, I'm kind of just backups everywhere else.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't just be one position to be able to
hmm
travel.
Yeah.
Like you
hmm
had to be able to fulfill at minimum 2 roles
Yeah.
that you could do to be able to kind of get access to that travel team. And so even in '08, when we're starting and we're doing these other things, we're on the scout teams.
Yeah.
And if that means if you were over on Scout D, that means you and I probably were together in '08 on scout
hmm
team stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because earlier in my career, I was scout offensive stuff. And
Okay.
then eventually I moved over to scout defensive
Defense.
stuff. And just getting fucking crushed
Yeah.
by the Pounceys and Drew Miller
hmm
and Gilbert and Johnson, and just these guys that just like toying with that edge of being a scout team hero, but not being a scout team hero.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I was much worse about it in like '06, '07, because you're
Yeah.
really trying to make a name for yourself
hmm
and earn your spot. But like by the time we get to '08, '09, like I've gotten shit kicked out of me now enough times to where it's like,
Yeah.
I know just enough pressure. I know the
Yeah.
pressure to be able to put on to where I don't get motherfucked by the GA. The GA doesn't get in
hmm
trouble. I don't get in trouble by the offensive line coaches. And I also
Yeah.
don't get in trouble by the players
Yeah.
either.
You got to go like 85%.
Yeah.
Like just enough to give a look, but not enough to like get anybody hurt. That's the big thing.
Embarrass somebody. Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's nuts.
Yeah. I remember it was brutal having to learn it.
hmm
Um, we're in, I don't know what game it was, due to the CTE that you and I both suffer from. Oh, it's funny for us, but not for our wives.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have a Torrey Davis story.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember Torrey Davis?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was gonna bring it up in the Oklahoma part because he had a big game.
So, well, I don't want to like. This is the story of him and Strong having a conversation.
Yep.
Is this your story?
I don't know. I was just gonna mention like that play, like a play that he in Oklahoma game like wasn't brought up, which I thought was like a pivotal moment in the game. But I know what the story you're gonna talk about, but I don't
I'll
remember all the
tell.
details of it. Yeah.
I will tell the story of so Charlie Strong
Mhm.
is linebacker coach, defensive coordinator, like real ass dude. Like I really love Charlie. And Charlie had a great relationship. He was key. And again, it was a bummer not seeing. We saw Mullen,
Mhm.
right? We saw clips of Adazio.
Yeah.
But we never really saw Charlie.
Yeah.
Like no mention of him at all. And Charlie was really pivotal because of the fact that he was African American.
Yeah.
And I think it was really, really fucking important for our lily ass white coaching staff, besides our strength staff, right? Of being able to like have Coach Mark, but otherwise we didn't have a lot of African American coaches with, I don't know if folks know this, but it's a heavy African American population on the University of Florida football team.
Yeah.
Like for sure, you and I, we come in, you're a linebacker, I'm a defensive lineman. We come in 06. We're the
Probably the only ones.
only
Yeah.
non African American, essentially African American folks on the entire defensive side of the ball until Duke Lemons shows up.
And Trat and JT.
And Trat,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like there's a couple other dudes like eventually
With his-
come up, Beal, like
Yeah.
it's a couple of these dudes come later, but otherwise it's just not, right?
Yeah.
So Charlie was pivotal for lots of
Yeah.
other reasons. So Torrey goes in, and again, I don't know if it's the Oklahoma game. I just remember I was there, and
Yeah.
Torrey gets a 15-yard penalty for excessive, roughness or whatever the fuck, like after the play, and Charlie pulls his ass back out, and he's just like, he goes, he tried me, cuz. And Strong, without waiting a beat, just goes, Torrey, this is not the fucking streets. This is a football game. It's just like, sit your ass down. It has to sit him back ass down. But God, like that. Yeah.
I remember that because like a couple of my friends and I like use that as like a joke every now and then. He tried me, Cole.
He tried me.
Yeah, I don't think it was Oklahoma for like because
had it been earlier.
If he did that, yeah, in an Oklahoma game, he probably wouldn't have played again.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a great story. I remember that. It's just like those little things like that is what kind of like sticks out of my mind. Like when I think back of like playing like these really random little things.
And just guys like that. Like, do you remember John Brown?
Oh yeah,
John Brown,
Hamburglar.
He is exactly what he was. So John Brown couldn't read.
Yeah.
Like it just like just it's so like just the stories are just so out of control. And poor John couldn't make it. Obviously, he's at a university and John can't read. Like it just was like dude, what is this dude doing here? Like why in the world? And just it's some of these guys that we had. It just is because you and I came in 06 and just is the amount of attrition that we had of that class is just how many dudes we lost. And then we're not even talking like walk-ons. Like I think out of like all the walk-ons, our 06 walk-on class might have been one of the strongest who stuck around the longest between like you, me, Miguel, Blaylock. Like there's so many dudes that kind of just kept on keeping on. Yeah. Poor Cody and his knees.
Yeah. They're probably both replaced by now.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, so that gets us. So that gets us to Oklahoma. Tell your story about Torrey in Oklahoma. Something that was missing.
Yeah, no, I just thought because I remember in that game, like, and I actually had to look back. Like, it was a close game and whatnot at the very beginning, low scoring, and I forgot the details. I looked it up. Like Tebow threw an interception to Gerald McCoy, so like probably defensive tackle. So probably he was like spine, whatever it was. And so they got it in close. And I remember Torrey, it was fourth and goal on like our inch yard line. And he was playing nose and he made like a big stop. And like that was, I think, when it was like 7-7. So like besides like obviously the really big plays that everybody thinks about when they think about that game, like obviously the first one you think about is the major right hit, which is like obviously like, that's the first thing everybody thinks about.
Right.
Or like the Ahmad Black interception. To
Sure.
me, probably the next one because it was a sudden change that we like they got the ball probably like definitely on the plus side, maybe even within the red zone. I'm sure if I look back, but it was a huge moment for us because our offense was struggling and for the defense to make a goal line stop essentially. So I thought that that was something that was from like impact of the game, like that was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The what made for me, like I had such a different experience of
Mm-hmm.
going for the 2008 game for the national championship because I got married the day before we left.
Oh yeah.
So like it's
Yeah.
my wife and I are we want to get married. We were going to get married like
Mm-hmm.
in May or whatever, and like the place that we wanted to get married was like closed and so it was
Yeah.
like, well, December 31st, we don't have practice. So it's like that's the
There you
day.
go.
So we're gonna
Perfect.
get married. And then it was like I have no family or friends that are essentially gonna be there. So it's just like the team's invited. So we like
Yeah.
have everybody over. And so like I have like these terrible, like we put like disposable cameras like on all the tables because we're so poor. Like we're so
Yeah.
poor. And you guys
That's
all
nuts.
came down for the for the wedding before, like the day before we then fly out to Miami.
Yeah.
And then that's where I had my honeymoon is
That's
in
crazy.
is
Yeah.
in Miami. Like my
Mm-hmm.
wife, and then what was dope was that she got per diem
Oh yeah.
because we're now like
A married
one,
couple. Yeah.
and
That's
so
awesome.
like we got double per diem. So like we spent none of that money, and that was like our grocery money for like 2 months or whatever.
Yeah.
That we had all that per
Bowl.
diem money.
Yeah. Bowl is all about trying to like maximize your per diem, and I'm
Oh,
sure we'll talk
absolutely.
about that in the New Orleans part. But yeah, it was a crazy game. Like obviously, like I'm from Miami, so like
Oh, that's
it was
right.
yeah, it was nice to like be able to like play there like at the Dolphin Stadium. And actually like I remember like pregame like I forget what he was working, but like one of like the guys that like I played youth football with, like his dad was on the sideline as like a photographer and stuff like that. So like being able to
That's
like
cool.
see people that you knew was interesting. Like I think it was interesting. I thought somebody had mentioned that like because we essentially stayed out in like Fort Lauderdale almost.
Right.
I don't know if you remember, yeah, and like that was strategically like picked. I thought we had the somebody mentioned at some point in time that like Coach Meyer did not want us in Miami, like South Beach, which I think was smart.
Why? Pray
Yeah,
tell,
yeah,
Chris, what would cause that?
but one thing I thought that was kind of like obviously Oklahoma was stacked. Like when I actually look back at that team, like
I
Sam
forgot
Bradford,
how good. I forgot how good they were.
DeMarco Murray, Jermaine Gresham. I forget who the receivers were. They had like one or two receivers. Trent Williams, like they were absolutely stacked.
Well, they were averaging like 50 points a game or
Yeah,
something
I
obscene.
I honestly don't like. We benefited more than they did on like the kind of the layover because essentially like they were one of those teams that started the
Sure.
whole like I probably like if I look back at it, probably Oregon was doing it as well. But like they were the first team we ever played that did like fast tempo.
Yeah.
And like I remember watching film, and I forget what team they were playing, but like a defensive tackle is looking at the sideline while the running back is running right past them. And I
Jeez.
remember like we benefited from having those 2 to 3 weeks to like prepare for that. Because
Sure.
it's like different. I remember like after every practice, we would run like in small increments, like 10-yard sprints. So you'd run a 10-yard sprint, then get like a second break. You run, and like I don't think without that, like I think it may be a different game, because like they were so explosive and so good, and like we had ample amount of time to prepare for like how fast they ran their plays, which is something that you don't really think about like a lot of times. Like in a normal, like you have one game, next you prepare for like 3 days and you play again. Like it's
No, for
it was
sure.
it was huge.
Yeah, the tempo of our games, because I haven't talked about this yet, is that
Mm-hmm.
definitely the tempos as we were preparing to go play teams for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It just was like you had game plan. It's set. We have one full padded practice on whatever, you know what I mean? And then we're shoulder pads, and then we're walking through.
Yeah. It's great. I think about that. Like, I remember like on the lead up to that game, that was like one of the big concerns was like, how are we going to play to their tempo? Because they were super fast, get the ball, get it down, snap it. And like for everybody, like getting signals and like things like that, like I don't know if we played a game and we played 7 days later, if like the same result would have happened.
I would agree with that. Just because it was also so different than anything we had played in the SEC.
Yeah.
There was no other team that did, like you said, hurry up offense just wasn't a thing that happened where we were.
Because like back then, like a lot of people were still running the I formation, like and stuff like that. So
yeah,
they were loaded, but obviously that's one of like it's obviously like one of those moments that you kind of don't forget about like ever. Like I feel like obviously we were on 2 national championship teams, but like I don't really feel the connection on the 06 side because like we kind of just got there, and in all honesty, like it's not like I directly contributed to much. Like in the 08, like I actually played. I was there for like 3 years with a lot of those guys. So it's probably the one that like I probably actually kind of recognize, and when people kind of like mention it, I'm like, yeah, I was on the 06 team, but like I probably, like you mentioned, and probably one of the other, like most of those guys probably don't even remember who I was.
Sure.
And or like even knew what my name was on week 12. But like the other one, like we were all together for 3-4 years.
Yeah, and playing, and for sure, like the 08, when I look at the 08 rings, it definitely is like there's a fondness that is there because you were a contributor. But man, 06, I got smashed by that offensive line. Like it's like I was getting smashed. Like I remember because I didn't share this story, but like we were like bowl week, and I remember I smashed Ronnie Wilson so hard that he and I both like blacked out for a moment, like just went helmet to helmet. He's just like, woo! Like it just was like getting smashed by those guys. But
that was miserable. I was a scout team defensive end at first. I don't know if you remember that.
So we can fully appreciate the different what Chris means by this. So it's so Chris, what how big did you ever get in college?
The biggest I got in college was 235. But I think so my freshman year I was maybe 215 or something like that.
Okay.
And I remember, what was it? It's Coach Zach at the time. Like it was we already had
Smith.
Yeah, he wasn't he the GA for our freshman year.
Oh yeah, like Zach Smith is somebody that doesn't get talked about.
I remember for sure. Yeah, but I just can't remember. Like we talked about like timelines. I'm really bad with like was it Cronin then or Smith? But I remember like Smith. They already had Blackett, they already had DeVoe, they had was it Mo Paul? I don't know if you remember Mo Paul.
Yeah, of course, Moses. Yeah.
They had like already like 4 older like scout team like linebackers.
Yeah.
So I remember like my first practice, like besides obviously all the stuff you do on special teams, you're like, okay, you're gonna like you do your individual drills with linebackers, but then I just started playing scout team defensive end, and like you go in there and try to wrong arm like the pulling like Tart pulling on you. I'm like, good luck.
Yeah, you guys are so much bigger. So like I'm 6'5". I played from 250 to 315, right?
Yeah.
And Chris is not that.
No, I was 6'1", 215 my freshman year playing defensive end.
Right.
It was nuts.
Oh man, that's awesome.
That was a miserable fall.
But on this topic of bowl prep, I felt like, man, when it came to bowl prep, and there were several little pieces, like bowl prep's not little, right? That's big. But I felt like we bowl prepped the shit out of stuff. So when it was like, when we had, like you said, those several weeks leading up to a bowl game, there was never a question, maybe in 07, but it's still like wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, like trying to figure things out. So I don't really have a recollection of like bowl prep to go play Michigan. So I don't have a lot of memory, but I definitely know like it's when we were going to go play Cincinnati in 09, when we were going to go play Oklahoma, when we were going to go play, fill in the blanks. It was like, I never was like, I wonder if we'll win. Like it just was like, oh, we're winning. Like this is even a question.
I think there's like a stat out there about like Meyer's record, like after a bye or like after like an extended like a couple weeks off. Like I'm pretty sure there's some stat like about like his record. That's like very impressive. But yeah, like it's basically every single person like that's in the football like team is basically devoting 3 weeks of their lives to beat one opponent.
Right.
And I have no doubt that like the amount of like preparation and whatnot that we put in put us in the best position possible, because every single like moment, like you're basically, and then you're also like not in school, which is important. Like
Oh,
you,
that's true.
yeah, like you basically are almost not 24/7 football, but like during that time, like after finals, which is basically like SEC championship week, like every bowl season, you're out of school, so you're just there practicing, lifting, watching film, and that's it. Like you don't have anything else, and students are gone, and so you have a ton of extra time to be able to do that type of stuff as well.
And distractions end up being pretty minimal.
Yeah, just boredom.
Right. It just the distraction really comes from, and we'll talk about as we go into 09, but like those distractions as you get up to the SEC championship game, as you get to those things where it is what we deal with all season long, what those guys dealt with, distracted them. There's a piece that I haven't thought about in a long time since we were playing, that just made me think of it, that I think you and I can talk about. So the best Fridays of football. So
I love those.
The best Fridays of football was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And so for you guys listening and watching, this was how we prepped. It was our practice before we would either get on the plane to go to wherever, Tennessee, LSU, or whatever, or we're going to get on the buses to go to that really nice Paramount Hotel and locally in town. And
the name just changed recently.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah, I was driving by. I can't remember what it's called now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Our car got broken into Paramount Hotel. Anyway, so before we go, and so we would go, and so we're in the swamp, and it was so much fucking fun. Like it was super relaxed. So like it was were we broken up into units, just different position group units?
Yeah. So it's basically like your position group.
Okay.
The linebackers, we played a touch football game, and we were competitive. And I like best Fridays in football because randomly, like I was the quarterback out there.
That's awesome.
So like I forget who was on my team, but we had like set teams. I think Stamper was the quarterback for the other team, and I'm talking about like I was scrambling, throwing the ball, like people were diving. Yeah, people were diving, trying to catch. Like we took it very serious, like best Fridays in football, and like that was fun. Cause like some groups did like you toss the ball.
We threw the ball into the garbage can. That was what all the specialists did.
No, yeah, we played touch football, but it was competitive.
And so that was awesome, right? So we would do that for the first little bit for best Fridays of football, and it got everybody loose, and it was fun and super low pressure, right? It was just everybody hanging out. And listen, our trash can football game got intense at times. Like if the ball like rimmed out, you can knock it out and like knock out. Anyway, touch football does sound more fun. Anyway, but once that got done, it got really fucking serious really fast.
Yeah.
And so this was a piece that I see teams fuck up all the time. And my brain does go back to this, where it's like, I know why we really didn't fuck this up. Why we didn't have, at least I don't remember having like personnel issues. And so this was where we would all get brought to the sideline or sideline-ish, whatever, like midfield, whatever. And it was just demonstrating what we would do on the sideline for the different packages that we were in. And it's so much more complex, right? Of course, right? For offense, right? All the different like formations and packages, and the guys have, and you have to know, right? It's like, it's who's there, right? They say this formation, you run out, whatever. And they're like, there can't be a hesitation in your step.
Yeah.
Like there couldn't be a hesitation and unsure. And it was always like, there would be some fucking freshmen that like didn't fully appreciate the severity of the situation we were in. But I remember like, it was really serious about it. It was like when punt team was going to get called,
Mm-hmm.
or if it was going to be the field goal unit or kickoff return unit or whatever it was like when that unit got called, it was like you snapped up there, you got there, you knew who your backup was. Like it was it just was there, right? It was automatic. And it kind of was like, I don't know, for me, that started to like set the tone to like go. And now we're going to go play. And it was just those little things that all starts with mat drills, those fucking things, right? Of just like being on the line, being ready, not getting punched in the goddamn face because you screwed up the drill too many times. Like it started there, but then it comes right there, like right then, to where it's so serious and something so little. I mean, it's not little, it can be huge in a game, but like it was how we prepped for it it just felt so deadly serious.
Yeah, I'm sure like obviously Coach Meyer has been extremely successful everywhere he's been, and I'm sure he's just like constantly refined like what that preparation has
Those
been
processes.
over the years. Yeah, because like for me, like kind of coming in as a freshman, like you come from high school and you just kind of throw your pads on and go play in the game essentially. And like that
Right.
was yeah, and that was definitely a culture shock. Like we literally practice like, all right, if you're essentially like I talked about on the right wing on field goal, like if I go down, who's essentially coming in? Like you got to, and I knew almost every single person out there, like who their backup was, because like I wanted to make sure if anybody got hurt in the game, like I could help and just
Right.
make sure that their backup was ready.
Yeah.
Because like obviously Coach Meyer ran the special teams and we had some assistants. Like I remember like Ryan, but like things are happening in the middle of the game that like you want everybody to kind of be locked in and know like who's got to replace who.
Yeah, it was. And
But
it was that level
yeah,
of like almost pride and accountability
yeah,
where it just was one of the questions. It was like, well, yeah, of course, like we need to know this, like to be able to
yeah,
knock it out. We're not going to ever talk about it. So I think it's important because you and I both played special teams. It's Meyer is the special teams head coach.
mm,
And again, it was another piece that we don't talk about special teams like at all. But like we had the number one punt team several
yeah,
years in a row.
yeah. It's nuts to me to think about how many block punts we had.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think about when I think about like our special teams, like how many block punts we have because like I still go to like Gator games. I can't remember like the last block punt we probably had. Like hopefully I didn't miss something, but like we like it was an expectation that essentially we were gonna block some punt that game.
Wasn't it the black?
Uh
It was like the
yeah,
black team.
black team, yeah,
Like when they call black, you're like,
yeah.
fuck yes,
And we
we're about
had
to get
like
it. We're
yeah,
about to
and
get the ball back.
it's like nuts. Yeah, like we like I don't know how many we had, but I wouldn't doubt that we blocked a punt like half the games.
Oh yeah,
Um, so like how many block punts we had on the return side, like obviously Brandon James was like special, but like I think people also took significant pride in like blocking for him. Like my singular
I
goal,
did.
like yeah, like my singular goal most games, if like I was only playing punt, is like I have one goal. The person I'm supposed to block doesn't tackle that man.
Correct.
Um, and like
That was for me for a
yeah,
kickoff return. Exact same situation
yeah,
where it's just
it's
like my guy's not touching Brandon. Like
mm,
Brandon will get by my guy.
yeah, it's but yeah, like our special teams was amazing during that time, and like hopefully it's something like we can get back to. I know like obviously like some rule changes and whatnot have happened that's kind of like limited
It's
some of
true.
like the special teams importance. Because like a lot of returns aren't really happening and whatnot. But like I remember being in the unit and like thinking like almost every single time Brandon James touches the ball, like there's a legit chance he's gonna score.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, like
100%. And I
yeah,
think we all felt that, right? There was
yeah,
all just an intense
mm-hmm.
um yeah, passion and our emotion to do well, like our drive
Mm-hmm.
to do well at that thing. It is a shame to see special teams get demoted how it is.
Yeah,
And I get it,
mm-hmm.
it's for safety of the game, and you and I can't remember like our birthdays and stuff. So like maybe there's a pretty strong
Yeah,
argument for it. But it is that special teams was where dudes earned their spots.
yeah, mm-hmm.
And so when a player that didn't get talked about at all or barely shown was Riley Cooper.
Yeah,
And like Coop one was amazing.
yeah.
And two, him as a missile
Yeah,
on
on
like the
kickoff, what he was.
kickoff team,
Yeah,
Jesus.
Yeah.
Like just a big bitch that ran like a goddamn gazelle and was just fearless.
Yeah, he was good. He was big, strong, fat, like everything you kind of want in there, and like that's where he earned his stripes, like in
But there was
06.
lots of guys, right?
Yeah.
Lots of guys. That's where you
Hmm.
earn. That's where freshmen could go and earn. And I remember that being a thing. It was like, no,
Yeah.
it's freshmen. If you want to carry the ball, it was always like for running backs and stuff. It's like running backs and wide receivers. It's like, if you want the ball, you need to be able to block.
Yeah.
If you can't block, then we're not going to throw you the ball because we don't trust you to catch the ball. And that's why I liked what you had said about Percy, where it was like, he blocked the shit out of you. Like he's going to block.
Yeah.
And then the same thing was on special teams, where it's like, if you want to earn your way, if you want to get that black stripe off your helmet, like special teams was the way to do it. But talk about, again, it was like, it's either offense, defense, or special teams. And I think it's really important because our special teams was so good, there were several games, and it doesn't come across in the series, where our offense just takes a shit. You know what I mean? Like they just can't move the ball. Like the Mississippi State games is one of them, and we'll get in as we go into 09. But it is it's like special teams was so important because that's what picked up the slack. If you could win 2 out of the 3 phases of the game, you could win the game.
Yeah.
And that was, I do want to talk, because again, of our special teams background, is, do you remember punt team meetings?
Oh yeah, that was the worst. Like I was never on the depth chart of punt. Like I sporadically kind of filled in sometimes as like one of like the wedge guys when they like we kind of moved away from it when we went to like a 3-man wedge.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just like that was Meyer's baby, was punt. And yeah, he was very detail oriented. But but like we said, like it proved results. Like I haven't looked at the stats, but I thought there was like 1 year where we had like less than like 100 return yards, 50 return, like something nuts like that.
Yeah.
And it's because we practiced it. If I had to guess, more than most any team in the country, we practiced punt probably more than everybody.
And we recruited really high quality punters.
Yeah.
Like whether it was Wilbur or Chaz Henry. And
Mm-hmm.
then I feel like after Chaz, I don't remember who like got recruited. And that's
Kyle
where
Christie, was it Kyle Christie?
Christie, that's right.
I only know because he played on my kickball team 1 year.
That's awesome. That's what you want. But it was like, I just high quality punters, and just was such, again, like a ruthless seriousness.
Yeah.
And I remember after 09, so I play into 2010. So I come back and I play the year 2010 when we play against Penn State in the Outback Bowl. But Meyer doesn't do punt team in 2010.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he puts DJ Durkin
okay. Yeah.
in charge of it. And I remember by this time, I'm a scholarshiped player. I'm getting my master's degree. So I'm only going to practice for 10 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And then I leave because I just snap PATs and field goals, period 1 and 2 or whatever. And then I'm gone because I got to get to class. And so like that was the, like, and then I don't come back. Like I finish class and then I'm done. So like it was the craziest, like I'm on the team, not on the team. Like I just do my job and I was perfect at it. And then everybody else can get fucked, kind of a thing. And so that was what it was. And so it was the peak of my emboldenedness as now a redshirt senior, having been there or whatever. And so I remember we're sitting in the punt teams, and it was the punt team meetings, and it was just nothing like it used to be.
Yeah.
Like no fear, zero fear.
That's crazy.
No diarrhea, no one needing Imodium. Like there's nothing. No one is going to possibly kill themselves after this meeting, which was all very possible.
That was basically every special teams meeting. Like I remember I cringed thinking of like watching the kickoff return tapes.
It's like, oh God. It's like, I know what happened yesterday. For the love of God, I hope he just goes over it and doesn't see it. And
but it's interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting because like obviously like I didn't play in 2010 Myers last year, but yeah, I didn't know he gave up like
punt. So he gives it up. So we get done with one of the punt team meetings. So I leave and I just go upstairs to Meyer's office, and I walk into his office and I'm like, sorry, I have to talk to you about something. And he's like, what is it? And I'm like, we're going to be terrible at punt this year. I'm like, there's no fear. Like there's no fear in this room, and it's going to be a serious problem. And he's just like, thanks for letting me know. And so he gets up and he goes, come with me. And he takes me to Durkin's office. Right. So this guy's brand new. And he goes, tell him what you told me.
Oh.
And so I don't bat a fucking eye. I'm like, sir, there's no fear in your punt meetings right now. And I said, and we have a significant tradition like here. And essentially just tell him like it's fucking patty cake and bullshit. And we're gonna suffer for it. And so like I couldn't fucking imagine what this dude has got going on in his brain.
Yeah, he probably screwed this guy.
Right? Like it just is, and I so don't fucking care. Like it just was, because again, it's now I've been here 5 years.
Yeah.
And it just was like, we didn't win last year. My expectation is not to take a shit in 2010. So it was like, it was whatever. And so it was, he pulls me aside like later and he just has like he's just like, you don't ever like do that again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and again, I'm not trying to earn a spot. Like I have the spot. I'm now like the worst version of like, I'm now a scholarship athlete. And so it's just like, oh dude, you don't understand. And I just doubled down. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm like, my only goal is to make sure that the bar doesn't get dropped. And I'm more than happy to like work with you on it. But like, that's it. And so he and I end up having a decent like relationship for the rest of that year. But Jesus, I remember how contentious I was. But it was because of how contentious that room was.
Yeah. Everybody was on edge. Yeah.
It was so stressful. And then it just was like, it was not that.
Yeah. I remember when I started on kickoff return, I ended up like mid-year, like not like they replaced me essentially. But I remember from like the
because Adazio ran KOR.
Adazio ran KOR. Mentally I knew after we went over, I think we did KOR like live like on Tuesdays. It's like after we watched the film Wednesday, I was like, all right, I'm good. I'm clear.
My week's done. I can just go get smashed on scout team. Yeah. Like we're good.
Yeah, it was nuts. Yeah, it's like that was your first meeting basically. Every single day with special teams, and yeah, it was. And as somebody that's the only way that you'll be able to play, like it was.
Well, yeah, for us as walk-ons, it was like this was it.
Yeah,
like this is I'm not playing receiver here. Like I'm not going to be able to play any of the normal positions. So it was truly, and I think that is where that drive and being willing to like just fucking run through a wall and do whatever, right, came from. Because it was like, no, this is everything. Like this is so I don't get tortured on Friday mornings. Like, I don't know if anyone else understands how horrible Friday mornings are, but I am not on the non-travel team. Get fucked. I'm traveling.
Yeah.
So we go from 08 to 09. And so this is a big deal for me because this offseason, I am playing that rocker position in 08. And then I'm like, I've got to do something else. Like I can't just do that. And Smitty now has graduated. So Smitty was the starting long snapper. So now there's like a significant opportunity to actually long snap. So right now I've taught myself how to long snap. I've been practicing all 2008 at home at the house that we had. So I'm snapping like 200, 500 balls a day at home by myself to get ready to be able to, because as a walk-on, you're going to get one shot. Like they're going to say, who wants to try this thing? And you need to be able to fucking do it if you want a shot at it. And so that was it. Like I was prepping for that one opportunity that we were going to get. And so, but I knew I had to have another position. And if I'm long snapping, I can't rock. Like I'm not doing the rocker thing because I'm snapping on the PAT and field goal team. So that's when I go to Adazio in the summer and I'm like, I want to do kickoff return. And he goes, no. And I'm in his office and he goes, no. And I'm like, no, like, sir, I want to have a shot at trying out for the middle wedge for kickoff return. He goes, Fairbanks, you're not fast enough and you're not athletic enough. You're not going to play kickoff return. And I go, who has the playbook for the kickoff return, coach? He's like, I don't know. You can fucking talk to the GAs or whatever. So then off I go. So I go to Ryan or whoever, and they give me the playbook or whatever. And so that summer then or spring, excuse me. So we're now in spring, right? Because that comes first. So spring we get in and I get the list or whatever, and they put up, because you have all those new kids that come in that are like the graduated high school early. Like, when did that start? Like guys graduating high school early to come early in January or whatever.
Yeah. I think that like became a thing, like, because I think Tebow did that. Tebow and Carl did that, I think. Like, but now it's like the norm. Like, I think
and then I remember like that was when the Pouncies came in 07. Like all those dudes did that.
Yeah.
But yeah. So new crew comes in, and sure as shit, I look at the depth chart and there's like fucking 6 people in that middle wedge position, and it's not me. I'm not on it. And I am so salty that this is the case. And so I go. So were you on scout kickoff?
No, at 09 I was still. So I think like I started some games, then start some other games. I was a right wedge on kickoff return.
Okay.
Spring I was injured though. So in 08 I had tore my shoulder up. I tore my labrum like mid year, and I just like finished the year, then had surgery.
Well, then this story almost involved you. So I'm so pissed that I'm not on the middle wedge, like anywhere in the depth chart. And so I go to Ryan. I think Ryan was running scout kickoff. And I'm like, Ryan, put me on scout. I'm now solidly 290 pounds. And I'm like, Ryan, put me on scout kickoff. He's like, no. He's like, and I'm like, no, I need to be on scout kickoff. He's like, no, dude, you're going to get me in trouble. Like, you can't. Because I had performed for him, like in the other spots or whatever. And so I had enough rapport. And I'm like, no, I promise you. I'm like, you can fuck me up however you want after practice. If you get in trouble, you whatever you want to do, like, you can torture, like, I don't fucking care. But I'm like, I swear to you, I will not let you get in trouble. Because scout kickoff, dude, you're just running fucking wind sprints, like whatever, 22 of them as you go through first team, second team, third team, or whatever. And I'm like, the only ask is, I said, you have to put me in the position that hits the middle wedge every time. So he would just move me from like 0 to 1 to 2 or 1 to 3, and he would just move. And so off I went at a dead ass fucking sprint. And I just wouldn't break stride when I would make So I have no interest in making the tackle on the ball carrier. I'm just fucking going through the middle wedge as hard as I physically can. And so I haven't told, I've only told like so many people this story over the years. As I'm sharing like the different things, it's like I'm getting this podcast started. Paul Wilson messages me and he goes, all I remember is one time when you were on scout kickoff, you hit me so like you hit me so hard that it was just like, it was because for me, it was reckless abandon.
Yeah.
And for me, and so first string guy, bilateral stingers, he's out. Second string guy, bilateral stingers, he's out. Charlie Strong catches on to what's happening. And so I come down and I hurt like the third guy. Like, I've now gone through like Rutledge. Like, I've gone through now several like real dudes. But the difference is like they're big guys at like 240 or whatever. But I'm so much bigger. And you get a fucking 60-yard head start.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a vulnerable spot of being that wedge for kickoff return.
Yeah, the wedge is terrible.
And I wanted it so bad, Chris. And so it finally was like the third guy gets hurt. And Charlie's like, nope, you are now on the middle wedge. You are not on scout kickoff. And so that's how that starts in spring. And then fucking summer comes around and motherfucking Adazio puts me off the depth chart again. So we get to goddamn fall camp in 2 days. And so I just started doing it again. I had to do it all over again of like reherding all the other guys that were about put in front of me until I was literally the last dude standing from like 4th or 5th string to now 1st string. And that's how I earned my spot to finally be on that middle wedge for starting for kickoff return.
But yeah, the wedge is interesting because like you have the dynamic of you run about maybe 10 yards before contact and the other person's running 50-ish or something.
And they see you the whole time.
Yeah.
So the
problem I had, like as not the middle person, is if we ran a right return, I'm one-on-one with somebody.
Yes, you were.
And I would rather have I would much rather know, okay, this person's coming and is going to run full speed into me because I'll just do the same thing.
Right.
The problem is like you're then running and also trying to hit super athletic people where like they're smart. They're smart as well. They just cut and come underneath you and like the same stuff we're teaching our kickoff guys to avoid the wedge and get skinny and come up. Like you're then dealing with super athletic people on the other side. That's kind of where I struggled, is where like trying to run too fast at them, thinking that they were just going to smash into me, and then realizing this person's way more athletic than I realized.
For sure. Like for me, what was nerve-wracking is I had to turn my head.
Yeah, you had to set.
So I had to set the wedge. So I had to turn. I had to be able to make a 12-by-1 adjustment off of the returner and then get us started. And then I'm turning. I may have maybe 10 yards, but at this point, once I found the guy, I'm 5 yards into contact. But it was the benefit of being middle wedge, which was I always got to have a double team. Yeah. So it was me and one of you guys. We got to hit somebody. Yeah. And essentially just fucking smash them to death.
Yeah. This was in episode 3, but my greatest wedge story is, and I'll try to be quick on this. We played at Tennessee, and it was opening kickoff. Well, I guess winding back. I don't know why, but that day, like traveling there, like I couldn't get the air. Like my ears were clogged. So like all that day and all the day of the game, I'm trying to like unclog myself, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, like just whatever. So opening kickoff, we ran something on the left hand side, like I can't remember, because like we basically double teamed different people.
Yeah.
And I come back, and it's one of those where we just run full speed at each other, and whoever the guy is that I hit, and at that exact moment in time, my ears pop, and it's just like I thought I died. Because like is like I just hear this loud explosion, and like me and the guy are both going down, and then I just hear the crowd going nuts, and I was like, I don't know if I'm dead right now. But like Brandon James had like a 50-something yard like return on that play, but I just remember like I was struggling so much to like clear like the like from the air travel, and like just on opening kickoff I just hit somebody, and my face exploded basically.
That's awesome.
Oh man.
All right, so we get into 09.
Yeah. 09, yeah.
We get into 09, and I feel like we kind of just jump, whether my notes just I didn't really mark anything else down, but like we're just in the Mississippi State game.
Yeah.
It's kind of where my notes go. But we do get the flu in 2009. And this is going to the Kentucky game. So we talked about it earlier, which was the Kentucky game in 09 is when Tebow gets a concussion and is out. I got to fly on a private jet.
Oh, really?
To go to that game because I got the swine flu. So I was part of the few players that got swine flu. So I didn't fly with the rest of the team. Like we flew on like a private jet. We're like masked. I have like my own room. Like it was like they were just keeping us. I wasn't allowed to come out. So I couldn't come out for any team meetings, which was so depressing. Like it just was like, it was one of those things where it just was really, it was super weird. It was just a very weird. They brought food to us. We weren't allowed to go to like the team meals or anything. Like it was a very weird situation.
That's so weird because like either I was like oblivious to that or like I just don't remember. But like I don't remember like any of like the players
Oh no,
specifically
like
getting swine flu. Yeah.
Demps got swine flu. Tebow got. I
Really?
think Tebow had it. Like there was a bunch of
Yeah.
us that all had it.
Yeah. Because I remember like it was like a big thing around campus. Like I'm almost
Mhm.
positive like my two roommates at the time because like they were like just locked in their room like under like 15 blankets shivering for like a week. So it was
Dying.
like yeah. So it was like a big thing at the time. But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Like I don't remember like any of the players kind of getting impacted by it.
for sure. And we were separated. And then my favorite memory of it is that you made a rap that we played like in the locker room with like, and
Yeah.
so we have to please explain. So what
Yeah.
who did this?
So like at the time, like the T-Pain like synthesizer app was
Yeah,
like
oh, that's right.
was like very popular. So like
Yep.
I don't know, like I just like to do like really stupid things. So like we were just trying to think and like I had like another rap later in the year, like what are some like really stupid lyrics we can kind of put together? Because I think at the time, like some of the players were actually like recording like real rap songs and like they would play it.
Of course.
But yeah, it was like swine flu. What the hell got me
Yeah.
putting on all this damn Perel? Yeah, it was fun. Like
It was
I
awesome.
actually, when I look back at like my college time, like I remember so much of that type of stuff. Like sitting around trying to record like stupid lyrics to play in the locker room just to like make fun of people and but yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, all the guys for sure. So that was my biggest memory because going into that Mississippi State or going into that year was definitely that Kentucky game where Tim gets knocked out or whatever. And so that sucked. But then the Mississippi State game gets talked about in the show. And the timeline, I feel like several times throughout the entire thing, all 4 episodes, they are wonky with the timeline for things. They're wonky with the timeline of like when they really turned up the screws back in 2007, when it's like, trying to make it more aggressive or more punishment, trying to kick players off by attrition. Like that didn't happen during the year. That happened like after, like at the end of the year, like that our 2007 to 2008 offseason sucked hard. But like same thing for this 2009 where they kind of presented this conflict that happened. And you and I kind of have talked about it before where they talked about like a conflict at halftime, and I don't remember any of that. Now, full disclosure, at this time, I'm now a full-fledged specialist. So I'm now long snapping and everything. So we aren't in the locker room for all of but like maybe 5 minutes or so during halftime. And then we go out early and kick. So we're kind of always away from the team during halftime. So we're not there for all the stuff. But it seemed to be where your recollection was kind of like, I don't really remember anything at halftime either, but we both remember something at the end of the game.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that there was definitely some words said during halftime.
Yeah.
But from what I remember, and potentially my recollection's wrong, was like the actual like separation and like the big like team conflict was like after the game. And I think like we talked about before, I think like one of the big driving factors for that was like Coach Mullen was the head coach on the other side.
Yes.
And I remember when he took that job, I vividly remember like the Pounceys like on him, like making fun of him, basically saying like you're like because at the time like Mississippi State was not like a winning program. Like basically saying like, oh yeah, like you're gonna be back here in a couple years. Like we'll have a seat warm for you, like that type of stuff. Like that's paraphrasing, but
it's very Pouncey-esque.
Yeah,
totally.
It's stuff that they would say. So I think like there was added pressure on our side to like go there. One, the Cowboys are nuts. Like I'm actually glad I got to experience that because like that's like college football, like that's really cool. But I think there was added pressure to go there and just destroy them. And obviously we got into a dogfight with them and it kind of bled over into like just everybody letting out frustration and anger. And yeah, I just remember being in the locker room, not really sure what was going on, but kind of thinking like, all right, I think I'm going to end up being in some fight here.
Strapping your helmet on and be like, well, we're going to punch somebody. Somebody hit somebody.
I was like just waiting for something that, yeah, it was, I think it was actually interesting that it made the documentary, like, because I haven't really heard that a lot outside in like bigger like mainstream population. So like there's a lot of things obviously the documentary doesn't touch on, and that's one thing that like probably from a fan perspective they learned, because it wasn't something that was like previously discussed anywhere.
No, and it was serious beef.
Yeah.
And it was very intense. And being specialists, we kind of walked in at the end of the game, and then there's just everyone's ready. Essentially, it's the defensive side of the ball and Spikes ready to fight the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
And like legitimately fight. And remember, we were just like in the back being like, we have no idea what the fuck's happening.
Yeah.
It's like we're so unaware of whatever's going on. But in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, it's like, well, the offense just played like absolute diarrhea. So my guess is that Spikes got fussy about the fact that they're suck a dick right now. And he kind of just said, hey, you guys kind of suck right now. Pick it up. And the offense can't handle like any type of criticism. And so they're all getting butthurt about it. Like it was such an interesting moment. But how long we stayed. Like we were in this, I felt like hour or 2 hours, like after the game, like they're trying to hash this out. And I don't think it does. Like, I don't remember it truly getting truly being resolved.
Yeah. I don't necessarily remember that. I remember it being a long time that we were there, and like, it's unfortunate. I think like all of these things obviously led to kind of like the end result. Like I think we like our expectations of each other was just trying to be perfect in every fashion. Because like it really was like if we didn't win the championship, like it was a lost year.
What was the point?
Yeah. And like if you think back in like 06, we were in dog fights and we won, and that was looked at as a good thing. Because like we can show resiliency, we can like we were the not underdogs, like we were never down in the fight. In 09, it was same kind of stuff. Like we didn't play very well or whatnot, but it was looked at negatively. So yeah, that's one thing that kind of like looking back, like it's a shame because we like obviously I'm sure either party kind of wished that didn't happen, but ultimately kind of came to a head.
Yeah. Now we go another game that doesn't get talked about, and it was the one and only, if I remember right, like we beat Georgia in overtime in that year in 09, and it's the only overtime that series has ever had. And so we beat them by a field goal.
Yeah, I don't. So is that the year? Are you talking about the year Chaz kicked the field goal?
Yeah.
So that was 10.
So was that 10?
Yeah. So 09. And the only reason why I know is because like what was I gonna say? Like I wasn't playing then and whatnot. So like I was like
you got to go.
I was just like in the stands tailgating and whatnot. And I remember Chaz like kicking the field goal and whatnot.
Okay. So this is that timeline situation that we've talked about.
Yeah. I think 09 we like waxed them again though. I think because I think that was the year that they came out in like black helmet and black whatever. Like they came out. It was like something really like corny. I think like
we're about to be in black jerseys this year, Chris.
Yeah. Well, like if I remember correctly, like they did it like the whole like come out and warming up and like regular stuff, and then they go back and get super and they get super motivated because like they changed their uniforms. And then I think we ended up like beating them pretty good. Yeah. I think the close game, if I remember correctly, was that year. That year was at LSU. I'm pretty sure. And I think we won that game like 10-3 or 13-3 or something like that. But that's a really tough place to play. Like it
was awesome. So much
that's
fun
probably my favorite stadium.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, so then let's go right then to the SEC championship game. Okay. We're leading up to 09, so to the 2009 championship game against Alabama. And fucking Dunlap gets a DUI. Like, I remember that being so crazy devastating. Yeah. And again, another player. So Cam Newton doesn't get talked about. right? And we talk about him in our episode 3 recap. We talk about Cam Newton being on the team for a stretch there. But it is, or is he with us in 08?
He's with us, I think, in 08. I think he's there up until middle of the year, I think, in 08.
Then we need to talk about right now, Chris. So the 2000, so we're already zooming to 09, but holy shit. So Cam Newton is on the team.
Yeah.
And his dumbass steals a laptop.
Yeah.
And the cops know he has stolen a laptop. The cops are fucking like downstairs.
Yeah.
They're like downstairs from his apartment, Chris. There's been illusion, right? We've alluded to the fact that like we have lots of lawyers that are on that help the team. Lawyers that are on the help team, they help things get dropped. Yes, like all true. But there's not a whole lot that the lawyers can do when the cops are texting and calling you, right? They're communicating with you downstairs. Yeah. You get scared, and then you throw the goddamn laptop out the window, like essentially onto the hood of their car.
Yeah, I was so confused when like all that type of stuff happened. Like, I think it's just one of those things that I have not spoken to Cam in not that I barely spoke to him, because he was, I think he was a pretty nice guy.
He absolutely, he was hilarious. Silly. He was hilarious. Yeah. He seemed super silly. I mean, he was a fresh, he was a young kid. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just one of those like young kid. Like, I look back at all the stupid stuff I did back then. It's like, it's difficult. Like, you have a spotlight on you.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and it's just it's tough. Like, there's so many of those type of stories of like people getting in trouble, and there's a lot of like the, hey, why didn't they go into like all the arrests and stuff like that. I think some of it is like probably nobody, like I'm sure they approached a ton of people, if I had to guess, to be on the show.
Sure.
And I'm sure a ton of people probably said no, and or if they said yes, like these are the conditions. Like I would reasonably assume like Coach Meyer was like, I'm not going to talk about this. But I feel like so much of like it's tough. Like you're 18, 19 years old, like trying to make a name for yourself and stuff like that. And like not specifically about Cam, like I'm thinking about like Carlos, because like Dunlap was like that guy was great. Like I had a locker relatively close to him.
Yeah.
So we talked a decent amount. Like obviously, like I was actually like my senior year next to the D line a lot.
That's awesome. That's a good spot to be.
Yeah, like literally, I was like the first locker on the right as you came in, and then like the D line were off to the right. So like I remember like when he like got arrested, just like looking at his like empty locker and stuff like that of like, what is our best defensive lineman? Like
hands down.
What in the and like it's
no, and for me it's not even it sucked. Yeah. It just for me it was just like, God damn it, that sucks so hard. It sucks so hard. Like he was passed out at like a fucking light with his foot on the brake, like in drive or whatever. And it's like, like it just was like, and that was kind of, it was just leading up to kind of just again in 08, right, when Percy is hurt. CI's like we have these guys that are hurt, and then we go into 09 and then we lose Dunlap, and it's just like, this is not good. Like this feels bad. This feels like a bad omen.
Yeah, it's just always like a tough thing to overcome when one of your best players is kind of then gone. And obviously like we were able to overcome it in 08 and 09. It was just something that on both sides of the ball, like we struggled against them.
It was brutal.
Yeah.
Like I remember just like feeling like a slow like disembowelment. Like on the sideline.
Yeah, I remember before the game, and I know like this is like the cliche or whatnot. Like I remember like before the game sitting in my locker, and like Emmitt Smith is walking around like saying hello to people and whatnot. And I remember like seriously sitting there like, this is odd. Like most of the time, like there's a lot of juice in the locker room before the games.
Sure.
And this game, it is true. Like there wasn't.
No.
And then I like two plays that at least like stick out in my mind that like at that time I was like, okay, we're losing this game basically. was who was the quarterback at the time? McElroy, I think it was.
Yeah,
he's like one leg hopping down like the right sideline to get a first down on like some 3rd and long.
Yeah.
And then also like one time when like Brandon James broke like a pretty good punt return, and like the punter got him. And it was just like those are things that normally just don't happen.
Right.
Like McElroy is not a super elusive quarterback, at least at the time. Like I'm pretty sure that was the game. Like he was like running towards the sideline and kind of like made a stop and then like was just hopping on his right leg to get to the first down. And like I would bet 99 out of 100 times, like you put Brandon James one-on-one against anybody,
a punter,
and it's like
let alone a punter,
and it just wasn't there. Like obviously they were stacked, so but
and they were hungry,
or at least like in my mind, like it's difficult to always say like we would have won that game, but like at a bare minimum. Like I like looking back and like once again, like I wasn't like a super like impactful, like we should have at least had a competitive game with them. And it was a blowout. And I think like that is one thing when everybody talks about like what is the game that you look back on, like for me, like that's the one. Because like regardless if we won or lost, like at least we should have, like we had the talent to very much have a very competitive game with them.
Sure.
And we just did, and we lost by like 20 something points or whatnot. We just got absolutely beaten pretty good. And then I think and for me, like I remember I was like, man, this would be awesome. Like you're from California. I've never been to California.
The Rose Bowl, man.
I had been to the Sugar Bowl growing up as a kid. I was like, this would be great. Like I will now have gone to every single major. Because we went to Pasadena, we went to Miami. Like I've been to New Orleans.
Tostitos.
Yeah, and like that's the one game that like just because I don't know if I'm ever gonna go to a Rose Bowl game. Like I just wish that we could have accomplished that to go on, and then I think they went on and like destroyed Texas, if I remember correctly, or something along those lines.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, it was brutal. It was brutal, and then Meyer quits. Like it's and so and you have interesting recollection too, and I want you to tell the story. We had a really unique spot too because as kickers we always came out early, so we were always at practice like 30 minutes before everybody else, and so we're warming up, and Meyer was always out there with us. He'd come over, talk shit, tell us we were no good, like he would do all sorts of stuff and mess around with us, and about halfway through 2009, that stopped. He stopped interacting with us. He was way more like it just is. So hearing a lot of these stories from his perspective of him sharing like his thoughts and stuff has been very interesting for me, at least, because how he always portrayed, you know what I mean? It was always just like his punch him in the fucking mouth. Like it just was like, it was always just go. And there never was like any humanness right to that engagement. But then again, like I said, about halfway through, we're like, something's wrong with coach. Like, and we were talking about it as a little specialty, as like the long snappers, kickers, and punters. We're like, something's wrong with him. Like we think he's sick. Like he's losing weight. He looks terrible. Like his car's always at the stadium. Like whether we were coming in the lift at 6 a.m. or whether we were leaving late at night, it's like his car was always there. Like he never was home. So there were some elements. And then there was like rumors about the daughter. Like there was rumors about all sorts of stuff going on of like, it just is like something feels wrong. And so certainly for us, we didn't think he was quitting, but definitely it wasn't a surprise when drama got turned up to fucking 11 once we lost the SEC game.
Yeah, it was like obviously I think I told this before, like it was interesting timing, but like for that specific day I wasn't shocked. Like I remember because it was a little bit after the game. Like I think like if I remember correctly, like it was maybe a week or two, because like he had the incident after the game where I think he went to like the hospital after the SEC championship game. And then like you have a little bit of time, and we had like then started like a little bit of like bowl practice. And for like some weird reason, like I normally played scout team linebacker. I think one of our like safeties was hurt, so like I was like, fine, I'll do it. I don't want to have to like hit offensive linemen for like 3 weeks. I'll go ahead and be a safety, sure. And I remember at this specific practice, like Coach Meyer was always very like regimented. Like I basically like knew like he's always going to stand basically when offense is running their drills, like off to the side of the quarterbacks behind them. And I remember at this specific practice, like he was on his phone, like behind everybody for like the entire like, but like I'm playing safety and he's like 30 yards behind me on his phone. Right. And at the time, like I thought it was weird. And I personally was like thinking in my head, because I remember like at this practice, like, man, I wonder if this guy, like he's super successful and stuff like that. Like, I wonder if he's like going to go to the NFL. Yeah. Because at that time, I had just walked for, like I did the graduation walk, but I truly didn't know if I was going to come back or not.
Sure.
Because I remember like you had to make a decision on whether or not you were going to walk. And then basically you were going to have to like figure it out. Like I was going to try to see if I can maybe come back that 5th year. And I just remember thinking like, all right, like if like already, I think at the time, Coach Strong had just accepted the Louisville job. So I was like, okay, like I'm 95% out the door because like, that's my coach. Like that, like he's the one that probably in all these things is the one sticking up for me. And I remember thinking like, all right, if Coach Meyer is leaving, like 100%, like that's it. Like,
yeah,
like a whole new coaching staff for like a walk-on that's going to be in grad school, kind of like you talked about, like that's basically a curse.
It sucks.
Yeah. So
super.
So I remember, so like all this is going on in like some early practice. And I was like, all right, like maybe like something's going on. He's going to the NFL. And then I remember like after the practice, that's when they said like, all right, we're gonna have a team meeting. And that's when he announced that basically he was stepping down. So like, I just remember like it was a weird day. Just because like he had never done that. Right. I don't think probably I'd ever seen him on his phone during practice.
Yeah.
So probably if I had to guess, he was like on the phone with like the AD and stuff like that throughout the day or something. But
yeah, it's just those conversations.
Yeah, it's just like interesting, like where your perspective is on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it so definitely seemed like for you, like it was not a shock. You were privy to that. For us, it was if we've seen him get sick, but then for sure, again, it's I don't even remember the team meeting where he like let everybody know.
Yeah,
I have almost no recollection whatsoever. But then in the documentary, like it's just like guys are crying, gnashing of teeth or whatever.
So I forget who it was, but like I remember somebody like was like obviously like you make a huge life decision. And you're 18, 19 years old, and you probably don't understand like what is going on in the background. Yeah, like people were like I do remember that. Like I remember the meeting. I remember him announcing. And I kind of think, if I remember correctly, like most people didn't think it was real. And then there was like some people that like obviously were upset, and some people that were very much like probably thinking on their side, like how does this impact me now?
Of course.
Because, like, in all honesty, that's the first thing I started thinking about when I was thinking.
Right, you're like, I'm not going back.
Yeah, when I thought he was going to, like, some other job or the NFL, I was like, all right, well, like, I'm not going to play pretty much. So that kind of ended up, like, solidifying that, like, I wasn't going to pursue, like, coming back that 5th year anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember at the time, like, a lot of the players wanted Strong because there was, like, that weird window where, like, he was... He was basically, he had stepped down, and I can't remember how quickly he said that he was coming back. But like
I read an article today because I was like prepping for you and I to talk, and it was like 24 hours. Maybe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like it was like a super fast. It was like I'm quitting forever, and then it's like just kidding, I'm coming back, and then it was like, but I'm stepping away momentarily.
Yeah, and I think like maybe it was at the meeting, but I remember like some people talking about like Strong. And maybe I'm paraphrasing here, but I thought like I maybe remember like him saying something along the lines of, like, I literally just accepted this job. Like that's something I can't I can't give my word to something and kind of take back. Like I hope that's a correct memory, but like that was something that like at least in my mind I kind of remember that happening. But I do remember people wanting for Strong at that time to kind of be considered.
For sure. I wanted Strong for sure. I did.
Yeah.
I really liked Charlie, and I felt like
great.
he was a holdout of those previous coaching staffs before Meyer gets there.
Yeah.
Like Meyer cleans house, fires almost everyone.
Yeah.
But not Charlie. And I feel like Charlie kind of got passed over a couple of times to be the head coach at Florida.
Yeah.
And it makes sense timeline wise that he had already accepted the Louisville gig. Therefore, it's like I can't not. You know what I mean? Not take it. But we do go to the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah.
So at this point, which was like I love New Orleans. So I love the blues and I love the Bayou and I love Cajun food. So for me, it was like, well, fucking awesome. But at the same time, it was like you could not have met a more pissed off group of people to be going to the Sugar Bowl. Like I remember us just collectively as a whole being so salty to be at the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, like obviously the aspirations was Pasadena.
Right.
I think the actual when we were there was fun.
Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
But I think
and ignore the obvious, right? Of like of Bourbon Street. I remember like them pulling us in and the cops talking to all of us of like prepping us. So they always did that for the bowl games, but I remember it being quite serious, quite serious for Bourbon Street. I'm not going to go into details, even though we said we were going to go, but like it's Coop's reaction to certain sections of Bourbon Street once you went too far. So if you went too far down Bourbon Street was it was the perfect just college football players reaction. My wife was pregnant at this time.
Oh, wow.
So she's in her first trimester when we're at the Sugar Bowl. So she did not have an awesome time because every time she smelled like seafood or anything like that, it made her sick. But she was like a total trooper to do all the stuff and go out. But I'm going to tell you, so for me, like the food is what kicks ass in New Orleans. And we went to a Brennan Brothers restaurant. So there's the Brennans, they have multiple restaurants and they're just top of the line, right? Top of the line food is Cajun style, New Orleans style food. And we go and I'm super pumped. My uncle's a chef. So he's super excited that we're going to be there. Like, he's like, oh, there's the restaurant. Like, here's the menu. Like, he's pumped, right? We're looking at stuff. Do you remember what we ate at that restaurant? Okay, because it sticks out for me so serious, right? I don't have memories of like the meeting with Meyer telling us he's quitting, but I remember this. So we go to the restaurant, Chris, and I'm so pumped. And for the appetizer, they give us crab cakes, which was cool, right? All right, cool. Seafood, we get started. They're playing like "Gimme Some Head" and like "Gimme Becky," right? Is the music that's like on at this high scale restaurant. So they've turned on whatever the fucking rap music is that we listen to in the locker room. And then we proceed to get mac and cheese, fried chicken, and Kool-Aid.
No,
was the food
really
100% Chris? And I was just like, are we fucking serious right now? Like,
that's weird. I don't remember that at all. Yeah.
Oh, it was insane. It was insane because I'm like, God damn it. Really? Like, at least in Miami, when we went out, we got to go to like the Fogo de Chao, whatever Brazilian steakhouse, which rocked.
I remember going to the Brazilian steakhouse there, and then in we went to somewhere like nice in Glendale. Yeah.
No, we went. The best food we had that was New Orleans style food was at the goddamn bowling alley. So when we went to the bowling alley, they had a fucking restaurant in the bowling alley, and at least the guy was like making po' boys or some shit, and that food was awesome. Like, there was the food that was there. I'm like, all right, good. But other than that, it's like we ended up going to eat with per diem or whatever to be able to get food. But I remember being just so, I'm like, God damn it, really? Like, this is what we're doing. We're here, and we're okay, great. We're having the food from the Paramount Hotel brought in for our dinner. Like, I was so salty about it.
I don't remember that at all. Yeah, I just remember practices out there in New Orleans, everybody just trying to get through it all as fast as possible.
For sure.
Because like you kind of knew that, not that you kind of knew we were going to win, but you kind of knew like maybe but essentially the coaches were more lax than any other time.
Definitely.
And so basically, we're all just trying to fly through practice so that way we could be done and kind of go out and kind of like, obviously we had different events like you were kind of talking about. We went bowling and this and that, but
yeah,
I had fun. Like it's a good place to kind of. I've been to New Orleans several times, and I remember I think didn't one of the Pouncies have like a kidney stone or something that he passed like during.
I think that's right. I didn't
Yeah, I
remember
think it
that
was
until just now.
Mike. I think yeah, I think and if you're, I think it was because Marquise, did he leave? No, maybe Marquise, because I think like I think he was a junior that year.
So one of them
But
already declare.
Yeah, but one of them essentially played the first quarter, then essentially like after we were beating them pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
I remember us going, and I remember when I knew we were going to beat the shit out of them. And it was probably the first or second night we were there.
Yeah.
And we're all walking, and you walk from the hotel, right? And we're walking down. You had to walk like maybe 5 or 6 blocks to get to Bourbon Street or something like that. And so we're walking, and all of us are in street clothes. And every one of the Cincinnati players is just decked out in Cincinnati shit. Like they are just full jumpsuits, wearing all their new bowl gifts and shit. And like none of us have any of the bowl, like no stuff, no nothing on. And I remember being like, oh, these guys don't know. Like they haven't done this before. And we're going to fuck these guys up. And their fans talk so much shit.
Yeah. I remember they had a lot of fans.
So much to say.
I remember they had a lot of fans. I remember some of their players partied pretty hard.
I remember the one dude was in the gutter or whatever. They found him the next morning, like in the gutter at Bourbon. It's like, oh, you poor bastard.
Yeah, I think that was Brian Kelly's last game too. I don't think he coached.
I thought he bailed on them.
Like I think he bailed on them.
Yeah, and that sucks. That sucks so hard.
Yeah, it was interesting, but it's like obviously not the way we wanted to end it all. But yeah, we honestly just kind of destroyed them. I honestly like, I know I played some like punt and stuff like that, and I think at one point in time I had to borrow somebody's helmet because like there was a punt or there was like literally I had to play one play with like somebody else's helmet because I wasn't expected to go in.
So you just left your helmet in the locker.
It was like towards the end of the game.
Sure.
Yeah, it was nuts. Yeah, and then like I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but like, and I feel like I need to talk about it because so many people have asked me about it. So somehow there's like from that bowl game, like you know how like when we travel we put out they put everybody's like nameplates and stuff like that. Yeah, like if you go on eBay, they have like a ton of from that game. So I've had a bunch of friends like, hey, why you have your like Sugar Bowl like nameplate on eBay? I was like, I have no idea. I'm wondering the same thing.
That's awesome. How funny is that? No, I remember it would be in like a mad dash at the end of some of those games where you just like took your jersey and stuff.
Yeah,
it's like I'm just taking all the stuff. You can ask me for it later. Like it's just,
like that last game, I remember it's just like, all right, like you guys are probably never gonna see me again.
Right. So I'm getting this gear and being able, you can fight me for it. You can take it out of my pay. Yeah. Well, ultimately we ended up ending, even though it was sour. I was reading one of the stats, like we're the only team at that point in BCS to ever win, like have back-to-back seasons of 13 game wins.
Really?
Or more. Yeah. So I'm like, oh God. And Tebow had an insane, like it was like a record breaking BCS game. Like his stats were something ridiculous of what he
I feel like he threw for like 300-400 yards or something crazy like that. Yeah. It was kind of nuts. But yeah, it was like, and then I obviously for like myself, that was the end of the road. Like obviously Coach Meyer coached another year, and from there kind of backed out.
And I was going to be done as well. Like I got my bachelor's degree. I was going to be done. It wasn't until they went through spring, and then I think Gaito was the long snapper at the time, and he just wasn't up to snuff, or whoever it was that was in. And I guess just Chaz and Caleb were just in Meyer's ear, and they were just like, "You have to bring back Fairbanks to have him come back." And and went through all spring, and then he eventually called and was like,
"Interesting, yeah.
Hey, do you want to come back?" And I'm like, "Sure, but I have no money." Yeah. He's like, well, "What if we gave you half a scholarship?" I'm like, "Then my answer is I'm half interested in coming back." Like I don't have any money, coach. Like I don't know what to tell you. Like it's and so then like another week went by or whatever, and then he finally called back and was like, "Okay, if you could get in," it was a him, right? It was Hiram. Hiram calls back and says, like, if you can get into your master's program, we'll pay for it full way. And so that's when I'm like, well, then I got to find a master's program. So it was like entrepreneurship or education. So that's when I went into education. And my family and my wife and I were like, well, we got to know, like, it's, if I go back, we're going to be so poor. Like, we're going to be super poor because she gave birth to my oldest, who turned 13 on August 24th. Well, that was in the middle of 2-a-days.
Yeah.
So like I had a baby and was starting the redshirt senior year, whatever, and getting my master's degree all in the same year.
Yeah.
So it was nuts. That was not the plan. But it ended up being like, the math was like 1 year of my master's was like $5,000 more than 4 years of the undergraduate. Like, it was just, at the end of the day, it was like, all right, it was worth it.
Yeah.
But,
I was in the scenario. Yeah, I was in the scenario where, like, I was to come back my 5th year. I was going to be going into my 2nd year of my master's program.
Oh.
And they were like, there was like no flexibility in the schedule. So like I would have had to miss like Tuesday and Wednesday and like show up on walkthrough. So I was like, there's zero chance that like I'm going to go through all off-season training to then like never really even be at practice, which didn't make any sense.
Yeah, it worked out for me just because you saw us.
Yeah.
You watched us all this. You watched us. It was we super stressful for 10 minutes, and then we were off the rest of practice.
Yeah.
And we were just trying to stay busy so nobody got mad at us and made every once in a while the punters would get in trouble and they would have to go in a scout team and get like crushed by somebody on a scout team. But otherwise, that's all we did. Well, Chris, this was awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming on and reminiscing through that episode 4.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Thanks for having me, and it was definitely fun to kind of provide a little bit of background and kind of talk a little bit about my past.
Heck yeah. Well, so for everybody watching and listening, so this is it. This is the end of our companion episodes for the Untold Swamp Kings docuseries out of Netflix for the Walk On podcast. So all of our podcasts moving forward are going to be interviews one-on-one with walk-ons that have played for across multiple sports, multiple years, anything where they came on and then they went on to do great things for those teams, but they were walk-ons, and that's how they started. And that's kind of the whole premise of what we want to move forward, is sharing those particular stories, because Chris's story and my story and Andrew's and Vernon's and Blackett's, all these dudes that have been on to help kind of tell this story behind the scenes that's tied to our experience of Florida. I just know there's a lot of amazing stories that are out there of other dudes and dudettes that have done this exact thing, walked on, and have kind of defied what really makes any sense at all mentally. Like, why would you do this to yourself, to then kind of come out of the other side and have really good stories to tell? And I want to tell those stories because I think it's important. So listen to future episodes. You can subscribe on our YouTube channel. You can go to any of the description links that we have below. Chris says you can find him in the streets. He's got, you're not going to find him on social. Apparently you can see some stuff he's trying to hawk on eBay, but if you want to find him, you want to follow him in those streets, and we'll leave it at that. Thanks everybody. Thank you again, Chris. And we'll see everybody next time.